Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com.
Welcome to Coronavirus Impact. I'm Larry Casper. We have on the phone with us Ed Mahon, reporter for PA Post. The first Pennsylvanian to die from coronavirus was announced yesterday by Governor Wolf. How will this affect the way you approach the story?
You know, I think it's, I covered the Governor Wolf's news conference last night about it. He gave a video message from his home in York County, and he was taking the opportunity to emphasize how this shows how serious the situation is and using the case to remind people that they need to stay home if at all possible. And he also warned that he believes this is the first death of many that is likely to happen as a result of the coronavirus. You know, so we'll be, following more of these cases, following more, if there are more deaths, we'll be following them as well and really trying to, show the impact and show how people are responding.
Ed, was yesterday's press conference from the governor's residence the first one he's done from there?
I believe so. I think most of them have been from the Pima Center. This was, and this one, I said press conference. This was mostly a live stream video message. He didn't take questions. It was a fairly short, I think like 3 or 4 minute message, sort of somber, and also just talking about his decision-making process and why it was such a hard decision to order non-essential businesses, or strongly urge non-essential businesses to close, and to order restaurants and bars to stop dine-in services. He says that he, understands how the harmful effects that can have on businesses, but that every contact that people have is just one more chance for the virus to spread. And so this is sort of a different, setting, and the fact that he was in his own home was sort of, in one way, it sort of emphasizing the importance for everyone to stay home.
For our viewers statewide, Ed, can you describe the area that you cover for your readers?
Yeah, so I cover politics and policy for Pennsylvania for PA Post statewide. I've been working out of the Capitol sometimes, and also sometimes, going out to different communities to see the impact of the policies at the state level.
So far here in Cumberland County, our backyard, there are 10 cases last we checked of coronavirus. How are those people being taken care of?
I don't think the Department of Health has released a lot of details about individual counties and how individual cases and how they're being cared for. Some of these cases, people are being hospitalized. Some cases they're being treated. They're staying home and self-quarantining. And you mentioned Cumberland County. I mean, the 10, that is pretty high for most of these cases are sort of clustered around southeastern Pennsylvania, particularly Montgomery County, which had about 42 cases. Which had 42 cases last time we had updated numbers from the state. But Cumberland County ranks fairly high as well. So, there's a range of effects that this has on people.
So let's talk about the effect on you, Ed. I mean, after all, you're a reporter, so you're used to being out and about and meeting people, and instead you're at home. So how do you chase down the news?
It's been an interesting week. We've been figuring out how to do this. I mean, I was supposed to be in Erie for this week for a host of issues I was covering, including a community college hearing and before the State Board of Education. That got postponed. And so, I was in the Capitol on Monday, and it was very much closed to visitors and closed to everybody except non-essential personnel. And I covered the State House action that day, and they were deciding whether to approve certain rules that would allow them all pretty much all of them to vote remotely going forward. And I was in the Capitol that day, and it was fine. But also the next couple of days later, the Senate did the same thing, and I decided that I could do all of the same work remotely and follow the live streams and talk with the lawmakers afterwards from my own home. So I've been mostly working from home in York County. I moved some desks around. And I'm, have my office set up here. My wife is home. We have 2 young kids, and so she's a school teacher, so she's been off. So that's a help as well. But yeah, it's been an adjustment. I have been going. Other reporters have been taking precautions when they go out. We're radio reporters, so we have microphones that we're disinfecting, and obviously just washing our hands more as well, and trying to keep any interviews in relatively small groups as well.
And how well are people doing in general with the radical adjustment of staying home?
I think there's a couple of days where there's some days where it's okay, and some days where I think people are getting a little on edge, and I think that's true for everyone. One thing that I did personally was, went to a county park in York County. It's pretty remote, and spent some time there. And I think we've heard from other experts that outdoor activities, there's lower risk involved in that. So if you're like outdoor activity that's not around as many people, that is a good option. So
I understand the health department is prioritizing the people who get tested for coronavirus. How is that working out?
I think that we're hearing more and more places are creating their own like drive-through centers for these cases as well. And I think there's been some update in how the Department of Health reports these numbers as well, because there's more and more private testing happening. So now the Department of Health has switched to pretty much only daily updates about how many cases there are. So last time we had data was the end of the day Tuesday, and so we're waiting to hear more about how many cases there are. And the big thing to watch is the rise, because so many of these cases are likely not being diagnosed, either because people weren't able to get tested or their symptoms weren't severe enough to send them to the hospital or send them to the doctors to get tested.
A couple minutes ago, Ed, you mentioned that the governor ordered all non-essential businesses to close in Pennsylvania. So is there a consensus yet on what non-essential is?
He's put out his guidance, and I think, it's helpful to sort of break down his orders into some different categories and the different powers. And so, the restaurants and bars, he's ordered them to stop dine-in service, and he has, power over them through like a variety of regulations, through the Department of Health. But for other businesses, he's like strongly encouraging them to close. And that's like gyms, movie theaters, and shopping malls. So those ones at this point, they're not, they don't face any penalties if they refuse to close or anything like that. But the governor has said that he believes he has the power to close them if need be. And so, I think that, and he has said that he wouldn't enforce that through the state police or National Guard, but that would work through local police or local permitting agencies. And that's really, in some ways, meant to discourage as much places as being possible as open. And so the range of essential businesses, it's obviously like healthcare providers as well, but it's also, he's pointed out that trash service should continue, grocery stores should stay open, gas stations should stay open. And so there's a range that are still essential, that he considers essential, but the non-essential is really like large places that people gather that are optional, essentially.
Let's talk about a story you filed about Pennsylvania's instant check system. Just what is that, Ed?
That's a background check system that if you go to purchase a gun from a licensed firearms dealer, that you will be the dealer, plugs some information in, and then the state system, shoots back that you are approved, that you have nothing blocking you from having a gun. On Tuesday, that system had, a host of problems. It was shut down in the morning. The state police said that was a server issue. And then in the afternoon, it shut down again. And state police said that was because of a backlog. And while this was all happening, there was, I think on a typical day, or at least typical at the same time last year, there was about 1,000 gun background checks being processed. And on this day, there were over 4,000 processed, even with the system being shut down. So, that was, some people who wanted to buy guns or who are gun rights supporters, were pretty upset about this, concerned that this was some sort of intentional decision as part of this governor's orders. State police are clear that this was not intentional, that this was just one factor was a technology unrelated to anything else, and the other was once that first problem happened, because there were so many other people requesting guns, that the system couldn't handle it, and so it shut down. But they're saying they're trying to work with vendors to prevent this type of thing from happening again.
Ed, I want to talk more about your being a reporter and the obvious challenges that are presented to you during this difficult time. For example, you're not allowed to attend the state news conferences in person. So talk about just how you do interact with Governor Wolf and his administration.
Yeah, exactly. On Monday, they switched to virtual news conferences. I was at in-person news conference last week with the governor and Secretary Levine, and that was, we were all in a room. And I think I was, starting to, over the weekend, I was wondering how long that was going to continue for have 20 people in the same room. And then on Monday, they switched to virtual news conferences. So for most of these news conferences, and they have these daily briefings, they have a system where you can type in a question. They give a special feed to reporters where they can type in a question and submit it, and then they'll answer that during the news conference. And so that's, so far it seems to be working out pretty well. It also gives the opportunity for reporters across the state to have a chance to answer questions. So that's been, one positive aspect of that switch is that, some reporters who wouldn't be traveling to the Capitol normally for these news conferences now have an easy way to get their questions in front of the governor directly. It's changes because there's less back and forth that you can have, but that's something that, we'll see how that continues to adjust. Then there's a lot of just, talking to I've been doing reporting on child care centers, and some of the people with the best information are, the advocates for these groups, because they're having a lot of contact with state officials. And so they're providing information before the state has officially put out news releases. There are a bunch of groups taverns, bars, and restaurants, on the ground. They're getting communications about what they need to do. And so they're all these people who are being affected are in a good position to provide information.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Ed Mahon, reporter for PA Post.
Thank you so much.
We'll hear from Kyle Kopko from Elizabethtown College after a short break.
Focus on Aging Adults, in partnership with AARP, brings you a monthly panel discussion with topics such as prescription drug prices, holiday scams, retirement communities, and more, helping you understand issues important to seniors. Focus on Aging Adults, monthly on PCN. Visit PCNTV.com for the latest episodes and to see the upcoming schedule. PCN, proud to bring Pennsylvania to you.
PCN hits the road to bring you unparalleled access to Election 2020 as you get ready to vote. We're traveling across the state to bring you complete, nonpartisan coverage of candidates and races that will impact Pennsylvania and you. Download the PCN Select app to watch live streams or on-demand programs. Get more at PCNTV.com. PCN, your access to Pennsylvania politics and policy.
We're joined on Skype by Kyle Kopko, Associate Professor of Political Science and Associate Dean at Elizabethtown College. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
Tell us about Elizabethtown College. How big a school is it? What sets it apart from other schools?
Sure. Elizabethtown is roughly 1,600 undergraduate and graduate students in the traditional residential program. We have another 250 to 300 students in our continuing education program. We were founded by the Church of the Brethren in 1899. And so we're a very close-knit community. We're focused on students. Lots of seminars. These are teacher scholars, faculty members who are strongly committed to interacting with students on a daily basis and providing them the opportunity to prepare for careers and lives of meaningful purpose and work. So that's partly why we're, such an interesting institution. We are student-centered, and obviously we're trying to adapt to this new normal, at least for the next few weeks.
Yes, Kyle, what is the effect directly on your campus? How are things there?
This is our second day of hosting online courses. So faculty and students had the weekend and Monday and Tuesday to prepare for the new online format. Obviously, our first priority has always been the health and safety of our students and faculty members, and our members of our IT department here, the administrators, have just pulled out all the stops and provided as many resources as quickly as possible to facilitate an online learning community through Zoom and our Canvas online Blackboard system. So students are now interacting live and in person via Zoom with their course instructors. And at times, instructors are also setting up asynchronous learning opportunities for students, so that way they continue their coursework as best they can and make good progress towards graduation.
So try to give me a mental picture of campus. Tell me about your residence halls. Are they empty?
For the most part, we have a limited number of students on campus here at this time. They're mainly international students who do not have the opportunity to return back to their home for a variety of travel restriction-related issues. There are only essential personnel on campus at this time. We do have a limited dining staff too to serve some of those students who are still here on campus. Essential employees from our facilities teams, they are still here as well as some administrators and members of our senior leadership team as well. So the campus is fairly empty, as one might imagine, and it's this way for many colleges and universities across the United States.
Were you doing online courses before the outbreak?
Some instructors were, and one of the benefits I'd say that we've had at Elizabethtown is over the past year and a half, we've piloted a few programs to allow for online classes, particularly due to inclement weather. So if there was a snow day, it was hazardous to head out into campus or to commute into campus. A number of faculty members had experimented with this online format. So we at least had some resources and some limited prior experience in certain situations, and now we're trying to expand upon that. Certainly our adult education program, that has a heavy online component, so for the most part, those students are learning as they otherwise would. But for students, particularly in upper division seminars, now they're transitioning into this online format via Zoom, where they're able to interact with instructors in real time and have a discussion, discuss their readings, discuss their research projects as they would in class. Obviously, it's a different format, and we're all having to adjust to that, but we're definitely making the most of the situation and trying to do whatever we can that's in the best interest of our student body.
So Kyle, as we speak, about how many students are engaged right now, would you say, in online learning?
Just about every single student in our residential program in one way or another. And I'd say that even for our students who are involved in internships right now, I'm supervising several internships this semester, even some independent studies. So we're having to adapt in that regard. Some of the internship supervisors are even providing opportunities for students to connect remotely. Obviously, this is something that varies from industry to industry, but even community members who are engaged in community-based learning are doing everything that they possibly can to help support students during this time. And if we need to adapt in some way, maybe shift a community-based learning opportunity or an internship opportunity more towards directed research type of experience for the student, we're making those decisions on a case-by-case basis with students, evaluating what's in their best long-term interest, whatever their academic priorities might be, and just trying to do what's right for them.
Is it especially challenging to teach certain kinds of courses online?
Yes, there are going to be some classes where it's maybe easier to transition relative than others. So I know that our faculty in the natural and physical sciences, for example, are in the process of trying to transition laboratory experiences to an online format. And again, this is just our second day of having the online component, so they're still working through this. But one option that some of our faculty members are pursuing would be to film the instructor conducting a laboratory experiment so students can at least see it, but then providing them with the data afterwards for analysis that they can conduct on our own. We've actually had physics courses in the past that were taught over the summer online, where students were provided essentially a kit of materials where they could conduct various experiments at home. So some faculty members are in the process preparing those types of kits. Even our art studios are considering that right now. Faculty members in music, for example, are also trying to do music lessons as best they can online via Zoom or Skype or another format like that, so there can still be that one-on-one interaction between the students and making sure that they make good progress on their goals.
It's difficult to be certain, of course, but is there any idea when in-person classes might resume?
For right now, we are planning on April 6th, unless if there are further developments. Obviously, we are monitoring this situation very closely, following CDC guidelines, federal guidelines, state guidelines as well. And I think many other institutions throughout the United States are just paying attention to further developments and trying to determine what this means for the rest of the semester. Are we able to return? What does this mean for summer learning opportunities as well? I know some institutions throughout the United States are also grappling with graduation and commencement because they might have an earlier date, say, in the later part of April or perhaps even May. And they're trying to decide what could they do in those types of situations.
And whenever your students do return, is there anything the college ought to be thinking about what they should do on campus before those students return?
Yes, so we're obviously going to be in close contact with our facilities team for any sort of return to campus. We will want to make sure that the dormitories and all the classrooms are appropriately prepped. We will make sure that they are cleaned appropriately too. So we are going to obviously follow any sort of state or federal guidelines on this because we want to make sure that we have the smoothest possible transition back for our students, faculty, and staff. So it's really not the students only. It's our entire college community. We want to make sure that we do everything we can to get everyone back here to campus in the smoothest, least disruptive possible fashion.
That's all the time we have. Thank you, Kyle Kopko from Elizabethtown College.
Thank you for having me.
We'll hear from John Longstreet, President and CEO of the PA Restaurant and Lodging Association, after a short break.
Award-winning historian Brady Kreitzer takes you on a journey through 300 years of conflict in Battlefield, Pennsylvania, a guide to the Keystone State's most sacred ground. The book, based off of PCN's original program Battlefield, Pennsylvania, explores 29 of the state's most significant battlegrounds. Discover the history in our backyard. Order your copy today by calling the number on your screen.
How did that become law?
Does the governor get to decide everything?
Why was that person elected?
PCN wanted to help answer these questions by creating Civics 101, a free online educational tool to teach Pennsylvania students how the state government works. Stream video interviews with elected officials, tour the state capitol and governor's residence, and so much more. Go to PCNTV.com to start learning today. PCN Civics 101.
We have on the phone with us John Longstreet, President and CEO of the PA Restaurant and Lodging Association. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, Larry.
John, tell us about your members and their establishments.
You bet. Well, let me first say that the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association represents restaurants, hotels, and travel and tourism within Pennsylvania. We're one of 5 associations state or nationally that represent the entire industry. And we have a broad membership, but one of the things we've done, and I'll get into more details about our initiatives as you ask, but we've essentially opened the association to all restaurants, hotels, and travel and tourism entities. In other words, regardless of membership status, dues paying, or anything like that, we've done so because we're the number one source of communication relative to many things that the industry needs right now, including how they should be operating, staying safe, keeping their employees safe, and also keeping the general public safe. And then as to relief and recovery efforts that we're pursuing along with our federal partners, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the National Restaurant Association. So in other words, we've engaged hundreds of restaurants and hotels over the last week to make sure they're getting our communications. So it's been quite an effort to try to first help the employees get money into their pockets because with all the restaurants closed, with the exception of takeout and delivery, there's of our 580-some thousand employees that work in the restaurant and food service industry, I would guess that 75% of those are going to be without regular paychecks. So first, we're trying to get unemployment relief and other relief to them. And secondly, we're trying to get economic relief to the businesses because restaurants operate on a very, very tight cash or profit margin. They don't have the cash flow to sustain this. We want to make sure that the employees have a place to go back to work after we get through this crisis.
Are dine-in restaurants allowed to change over to takeout if they don't normally do that?
Yes, they are. In fact, it's not only are they allowed, Larry, they would be encouraged to do so. Not even so much as a matter of trying to find a way to make money, because it's going to be a small fraction of what they were making. Most restaurants that already had takeout at the high end might have been 10% of their sales. But the reason why it's so important is that over 50% of the money that's spent on food is spent on food away from home, which means that without the restaurants being able to continue to provide food to the public, the food chain is going to be in even a more difficult situation than it already is, as we see with the grocery store shelves going empty. So it's a real important part. Plus, there are people that either can't get to the grocery store or don't know how to cook. So it's been a really important part of it. We've seen restaurants that have never done takeout that have geared up to do it mostly as a community service.
And is there anything your association can do specifically to help these restaurants who really don't know anything about the takeout business? How can you get them up and going quickly?
We have a lot of best practices that we're sharing, and we've set up a COVID-19 web page, which is open to anyone. As I said, member or not, we're not concerned about whether folks are members now. We're just concerned about helping. And we've had great influx of that. We're doing regular webinars. We had one yesterday that covered all of the recovery and relief efforts that are underway now. And then on the website, there's a lot of resources, closing checklists for restaurants to know the things that they need to do to ensure that their operation will be in good shape when they reopen. Some people have never closed a restaurant before, as you can imagine. And also, I will say a big part of takeout is delivery, and we're trying to connect operators when they need it with delivery services. Some of the national services like DoorDash have offered no-fee services to restaurants just to help them get food to people that need it, and the reduced fees for their existing customers. And then many restaurants that had not done delivery are trying to do it themselves because they want to give their team members there that might otherwise be laid off a chance to make some money. So it's been a great effort on the part of the restaurant community to, in the face of this crisis, to try to do their best to serve the public.
And John, who knows how long this will go on? How many of your members can stand a long-term shutdown?
Without 90% of restaurants are small businesses, and without some sort of relief package, very few can. A restaurant typically operates on a 5% profit margin, and not to forget about our hotel members. Our typical break-even for a hotel is 50% occupancy. The city of Pittsburgh, since this has started, has run 12% occupancy. Statewide, I wouldn't be surprised if it's even lower than that. So they're not going to be able to survive it. I talked to a large hotel company CEO yesterday. I'm talking about a hotel management company that operates hotels for other brands, and he said they don't have the cash flow to make it through. And this is an established 30-year-old company. So there's got to be money made available, and you've seen some federal programs come around. We were able to, as of yesterday, get all 67 counties in Pennsylvania eligible for small business administration relief loans, which is a bit of a project, but that's been done. So the governor's now opened that up. That would enable businesses to get up to $2 million over a 30-year repayment period. The governor mentioned that he's freed up $60 million in interest-free loans. Frankly, $60 million is great. It doesn't go very far when you consider the disaster that we're facing right now. So it's going to be really important to get money, cash flow into these businesses. One of the things that we've been working diligently on is trying to convince the governor and the legislature to suspend the sales tax payments that are due tomorrow from businesses, which in many cases it's quarterly tax payment, which in many cases is a significant amount of cash that could be used to help keep employees at work and help to keep businesses open so they can survive this, or at least have them cover their fixed expenses throughout.
Last question, John. You talked in detail about your hopes for relief from the state government. Anything in sight from the federal government?
Well, you've seen a lot of what the federal government is doing. It's on the news several times a day. But some of the things that we've been seeking there are any sort of, and I wouldn't call it a bailout, but I would call relief efforts for the industry that could include cash grants and low interest loans, taking taxes that are currently being offered, and essentially, and this is a state issue, but to do a sales tax holiday. Sales tax holidays would help not only the businesses but the consumers. As you saw, income taxes, which apply to a lot of small businesses because they file individual tax returns, have been suspended until I believe it's August 15th by 90 days. That's an example of it. Any sort of franchise fees or other fees that are required right now should be suspended. So essentially, it's got to be a way to get money back into the pockets of the businesses. I will tell you a big one is many businesses, if not most, have as a part of their insurance package something called business interruption insurance. And unfortunately, in 2006, there was a clause added to most of those, which is a virus out clause, which essentially says that if you have to close your business down, or if you've been closed down because of government order, that you can't get business interruption insurance paid out on this. We're trying to get the insurers to revisit that and trying to get the federal government to backstop the insurance companies, because obviously if all the insurance companies had to pay all the businesses that are closed, that's going to make it difficult on them. But the fact of the matter is the businesses will not reopen without these kind of significant payments that can help them survive. Okay, we'll have to stop on that note. John Longstreet, President and CEO of the PA Restaurant Lodging Association, thank you very much. Hey, thank you, Larry. That's it for Coronavirus Impact. Join us weekdays at 12 noon and 8 p.m. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube. Check for more schedule information at pcntv.com. I'm Larry Casper. Thanks for watching.